biggest surprise about the second book, the post-war era, was how the skyscrapers were really used to reshape the city. In the first book, I looked mostly at how skyscrapers evolved, how the technology in particular changed from 1870 through 1934. The technology in the post-war era stayed largely the same. It evolved, but slowly. What really changed was that there was a city administration that saw the skyscrapers as a tool, almost like game pieces, to help kind of rearrange and reconstruct the city. And the fact that they had such a big political impact and social impact, economic impact, that was really the big surprise, that they went really from being more of a technical phenomenon to being more of a socio-political phenomenon. Chicago has always been a laboratory for high-rise buildings, so a lot of the ideas that came up there have migrated or been exported to other cities. So in addition to ideas about things like high-speed elevators and insulated glass for cladding and things like that, I think the real innovations that Chicago has exported are ways to build taller, better. So the expertise that came with building something like the Sears Tower, almost 500 meters high, that expertise was taken by the firm, Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, and used in other buildings, none quite as tall at the time, but some of them very tall and therefore hard to build with traditional techniques. Their expertise really made it possible to build tall in other parts of the world. And I think that project also inspired a lot of high-rise construction. It wasn't just the technology that was exported. It was the whole idea that you could go over 300 meters, say, and still have a skyscraper that was buildable. There is one very particular Chicago skyscraper that I think really encapsulates just how complex and rich the building culture was at the time. And that's Marina City, which are a pair of residential towers right on the riverfront, designed by Bertrand Goldberg and built from 1961 to 1965. They were part of a move by the city to bring residents back downtown, to sort of repopulate the downtown area with workers in corporate office buildings that the city wanted to get built in the Loop. So from the city's point of view, they wanted to bring all sorts of office workers downtown, middle class, professional class, clerical class, even executive class. Marina City was really the first project to do this, that it was not just a place to live, but it was also a place to play and to work. So it had an ice rink and a movie theater and a small office building and a shopping mall, what today we would call mixed use. At the time, this was revolutionary. There's a project called Sandburg Village on the north side that was one of these so-called urban renewal projects where an existing neighborhood was basically erased. These neighborhoods were usually poor, but they were also almost always black neighborhoods. And what was built in its place was supposed to be a project for low and middle income housing. The developer was very, very loose with his definition of what low and middle income housing would be, and ended up building a very, very profitable, very well designed, very beautiful, but very, very troubling in its impact. A beautiful project that was really a sort of middle and upper middle class bit of housing that in some ways, when you look at the map of Sandburg Village, was a sort of defense mechanism, right? It was designed to keep the neighborhood to the west, which was largely poor, largely black, from coming east and, in their view, infiltrating the so-called Gold Coast, the wealthiest neighborhood of Chicago. But at the time, it was really an illustration of how closely knit the development community and the political leadership of Chicago were. there was a preservation movement in Chicago that really started in the 1970s and was successful in raising awareness. I think the real success of the preservation movement in Chicago, though, has come from sort of lateral thinking, or thinking about how buildings can be reused for different purposes. That idea of sort of repurposing, I think, has been the strongest case for preservation, certainly in Chicago. My work really looks at how technologies are integrated in buildings. So thermal comfort has been a part of what I've done. And the most recent research I've done has looked at how three technologies, air conditioning, lighting, and building cladding, have influenced one another. So if you can have air conditioning, you no longer need to open your windows for ventilation. If you have good fluorescent lighting, you no longer need windows for lighting. So what do you do with the building skin? And the process of skins developing to become, first more solid so that they insulate better, but then much more glass because we get better glass technologies, better insulating glass. Those have all, I think, been part of what I've researched in the newer book.
Cut it down
right
to a 10-minute video.
Great, and make me sound very smart, I hope. Okay, good.